In his farewell speech, the first U.S. President, George Washington, warned a very young America of the threats of foreign influence. The year was 1796. This week, the 45th President of the United States, he made it clear that he would be open to foreign influence if it could help him win the next election. Tonight, there are more calls in Washington for Donald Trump to be impeached, but in Moscow and in Beijing, they may be busy digging for dirt. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
Yesterday, the president gave us once again evidence that he does not know right from wrong.
Disgraceful, shocking.
Do you want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it.
It's as if the president has learned absolutely nothing from the past 2 years of investigations into Russia's interference with the 2016 elections.
Also coming up tonight, voting has begun to choose Britain's next Conservative Party leader and its next Prime Minister. Boris Johnson, closer than ever to being the one.
One of the reasons why the public feels alienated now from us all as a breed of politicians is because too often they feel we are muffling and veiling our language, if I might put it that way.
Well, to our viewers on PBS in the United States and all around the world, welcome. We begin the day asking, has U.S. President Trump just thrown open the 2020 presidential election to foreign spies? In a presidency saturated in Trump's defiance of presidential norms and standards, it is difficult to be shocked by anything we hear from the Oval Office. But that is exactly what the U.S. president has done. In an exclusive interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, he said that he would be open to information from foreign countries that could hurt his political rivals in the next election. And Trump added he doesn't agree with the head of the FBI, the man he appointed, that foreign offers of the electoral kind should be reported to the FBI. Well, today, the volume among Democrats calling for Trump to be impeached increased a few decibels. And there are more politicians saying openly that President Trump represents a threat to the national security of the country and the Constitution that he was elected to protect. Today, Trump pushed back, saying campaign help from foreign governments is comparable to holding meetings with world leaders such as Queen Elizabeth. Let's start with that talk in the Oval Office that has stunned much of the world.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
Do you want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
Oppo research. All right, let's talk about that. I'm joined at the big table here by Julianne Smith. She's the former Deputy National Security Advisor to former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. She's in Berlin this year as a fellow at the Bosch Academy. It's good to have you back on the program. You know, you have been on the inside. For our viewers, tell us, is it common practice for a sitting U.S. president to accept campaign help information from a foreign government that he could then use against his opponent in a national election?
No, I mean, the short answer is obviously no. It's completely unacceptable and inappropriate for a sitting U.S. president to seek or receive incriminating information on any sort of political opponent. It's also inappropriate for anyone running for office, whether it's for Congress, whether it's for U.S. president. That is absolutely unacceptable. Now, you can meet with foreign leaders. That's a common part of the job. As the American president and as holders of office across our government. They do that on a regular basis. But it is not in any way acceptable to have the president make the statement that he did. Ultimately, what he has done is he has opened the door and he has welcomed other countries to essentially interfere in our election. He's undermining our democracy and he's undermining the intelligence community, not to mention his own FBI director, who said that anyone who would be approached with this type of incriminating information should call the FBI. Trump somehow believes that's the wrong approach. So it's troubling.
Julie, there are examples of U.S. Campaign teams seeking information by going abroad. But when a foreign entity knocks on your door at the White House, they're taking the initiative there, and alarm bells should be going off, shouldn't they?
Absolutely. I mean, we saw the reaction across Washington today. As you noted at the opening of the segment, there are increasing calls now for impeachment. I think the American people have been shocked by this, particularly in light of what happened in the 2016 election, where there's ample evidence that there was Russian interference. For the same president now to stand up and say, his quote was, "I'll take it," is absolutely astounding and deeply, deeply worrying about what could come in 2020.
I want you to take a listen to what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said today about this.
Intelligence community with great confidence has put forth that the Russians interfered in our election. That's an assault on our democracy. An assault on our democracy. This president says it's a hoax. He takes an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but I guess it doesn't include him in terms of being to be held accountable to obey the law.
You mentioned 2020. I mean, what do you think this means for the 2020 election?
Well, I think all of us should be worried about the extent to which this president has an open mind and could, in fact, be amenable to receiving any sort of intelligence from a foreign entity. Again, given our history in 2016, one would hope that we were fortifying our defenses right now against any sort of attempt to interfere in our election, whether directly or indirectly. And yet today's statement really gives, I think, many of us pause and great concern about how the president's going to behave vis-a-vis foreign intelligence services and foreign leaders in the run-up to this next election.
You wrote an op-ed piece which appeared in the New York Times this week entitled, "If Trump wants to take on China, he needs allies, and he should start with Europe." And we can see it right there. There's a section from your article that we want to highlight for our viewers. You write, "On the subject of China, Europeans feel like they've been relegated to observer status. Trump administration officials, they've made few efforts to brief allies on their China policy. The Trump administration's approach, which includes threatening to limit intelligence sharing with any ally that proceeds to build its next generation of mobile infrastructure with Huawei, is a losing strategy. Europeans," you write, "are tired of taking orders from Trump's America." Is it really that simple that the president of the United States thinks that he can come to Europe and tell the Europeans what they should do, and he thinks they're going to follow through?
Well, I think, unfortunately, with the current administration, they want to talk to Europe about China, but they have essentially one or two topics. They're worried about the investments that the Chinese are making in Europe. So the Trump administration wants to talk to Europeans about investment screening. That's wise. They also want to talk to Europeans about Huawei and their efforts to build these 5G networks, because Americans believe that there are some security vulnerabilities. Those are fine subjects subjects for conversation. But the way in which the Trump administration has gone about it is they have essentially threatened the Europeans to say, if you go ahead and work with Huawei on 5G, we're going to halt intelligence sharing. And that's rubbed many Europeans the wrong way. They're saying, wait, I thought we were going to work together as partners on China, as we do with many common challenges. And now you're kind of barking orders at us, demanding that we make this immediate change. And it's undermining our ability to work together. I mean, China presents so many challenges.
And what does that mean at the end of the day? The approach by Trump is hurting the U.S., it's hurting Europe, and it's, strengthening China?
Well, essentially, it's giving China the upper hand. What China wants to have happen right now, as the Russians do as well, they like when Europe and the United States are bickering and divided and can't really agree on approach. That's good news, because China can keep going on with its efforts to undermine international institutions, transatlantic resolve and unity. And so Trump's approach, in my mind, is not only hurting America's ability to work with Europe on China, but it's really undermining the West's ability to tackle these political, economic, technological challenges that China poses to all of us.
And you're not advocating trying to find agreement or consensus on every issue. In fact, you write in your piece, we want to show our viewers a segment here, you write, working with Europe will not be easy. The two will never be in a perfect lockstep on China, especially when it comes to security issues. Europe doesn't have anything resembling America's forces in Asia, nor does it share America's security commitments. Even inside Europe, there will continue to be different approaches to China. I mean, so agree to disagree, but agreeing that together you're stronger than just following America first, for example. I mean, do you think Trump's going to come around thinking this way?
I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that Trump really sees Europe as a partner in dealing with the challenges that China poses. But I do believe that if we were smart about this, we would try and find a couple of areas where we could work together. We'd strengthen our trade relationship, we'd coordinate our policies on things like China's human rights abuses, or we'd come up with some alternatives for China's Silk Road project that it's pursuing around the world.
What do you hear here in Europe from policymakers regarding the credibility of any Trump policy? I mean, if he were to change course, would leaders here in Europe, would they give him the benefit of the doubt?
Well, I think if Trump were willing to start without threatening our allies, I think that'd be a good start. But to be honest, there's a lot of mistrust in the relationship right now. A lot of this administration's, a number of the actions have undermined trust in the relationship, and it would be hard to chart a new course. That said, I would hope that the administration would give it a try, because there's so much Europe and the United States, despite our differences, could be doing together right now vis-a-vis China.
You've been here in Europe for almost a year now, right? You're going to go back to the States. What would you say the Trump factor has done to U.S.-European relations that you've seen in just the short time you've been here? I mean, have you seen changes? Have you seen the price of Trump's policies being paid here?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of doubt about the value of this relationship on both sides of the Atlantic. Americans are questioning, why do we have these NATO allies? Why aren't they spending enough on defense? Europeans are asking, do we even share common values anymore? We're not working together on Iran. We're not working together on climate. Our trade relationship is in tatters. So the relationship is ailing both at the elite level, really on a leader's level. The relationship between Merkel and Trump, for example, is not great. But what I worry about is kind of the lasting damage that's being done at the public level, where trust at that level also seems to be eroding. And I hope that this won't be something that's with us forever. I hope that with change in leadership on both sides of the Atlantic will see this through.
Before we let you go, how do you explain to Germans and to Europeans the whole election process in the United States? You know, we're a long way away still from the 2020 presidential election, and already, you know, that's almost all you hear in the U.S. now. It's this horse race right now.
Yeah.
You know, your old boss, you know, right now, the other Democratic contenders. But does that really help the public good? I mean, you know, elections don't work that way here in Europe at all.
Right. No, absolutely not. It's hard to explain why we have a process that essentially now has become a 2-year process. Yeah. And so we spend a lot of time going through, and in this case, many different candidates, certainly on the Democratic side. So it's hard because it's apples and oranges. Our systems are very different.
Apples and oranges, that's right. You say tomatoes, we say tomatoes, that's right. Julianne Smith, as always, we appreciate you coming in and sharing your insights with us. Thanks. And come back again one more time, at least before you head back over across the Atlantic. Thank you.
Thanks.